Hello students, I am Dr. Krupa Rasne, Professor and Head ENC Department, Jain College of Engineering, Belgavi. Okay, so let us continue with the 7th video of Module 1 in Power Electronics for the 7th semester VTU syllabus. So these are the two chapters we have for the Module 1. We have already covered the first chapter and we are into the chapter 13 as per the textbook of Muhammad H. Rashid. So in chapter 13, we have seen power transistors and its characteristics. We have also seen power MOSFETs, its steady state and switching characteristics. In this video, we'll be looking at IGBT's device operation, output and transfer characteristics. di by dt and dv by dt limitations will also be looking at. So IGBT is nothing but a device which is made up of a combination of MOSFET and your transistor, and basically it has got the three terminals: collector, gate and emitter. So the metal oxide semiconductor insulated gate transistor or IGBT combines the advantages of both BJT and MOSFETs. Therefore, an IGBT has a high input impedance because we have got the MOSFET on the left hand side which acts like the input, and MOSFETs are known for having high input impedance and a low on-state power loss. A BJT has a low output resistance and hence the low power state loss will be less. Further, IGBT is free from secondary breakdown problem present in BJT. So secondary breakdown phenomenon I just described in the previous video. It is nothing but accumulation of heat at a local point which then spreads to other parts of the body whenever there is a heavy current flowing through the device. So now this is the basic structure of IGBT, and you will see that it is very similar to MOSFET, except we will have emitter here which is connected instead of the source, and here at the substrate we have got P plus substrate instead of N plus, and this is connected to the collector. Okay, and we have the gate voltage here. In the same way as MOSFET, here also we have to apply a voltage greater than VGTH, a threshold voltage, for the current to start flowing from the collector to emitter. So how that happens, we'll see in the next slide. So we have virtually seen that it is very similar to your MOSFET. However, the substrate is now P plus, as I told you, and it is connected to the collector. When the negative is the gate is positive and is with respect to emitter and with the gate emitter voltage greater than VGTH, and channel N is formed, okay, which as in the case of MOSFET, okay, except now it is from the collector to the emitter. The N minus channel short circuits the N minus region with the N plus region. You can see this, right? So here also and here also. And electron movement in the N minus channel, okay, that is happening here. In turn, it will cause substantial hole injection from the P substrate layer into the epitaxial N minus layer, okay, here. Eventually, a forward current is established. So this is how your IGBT works. Now just let us peek inside what exactly happens in IGBT and how the structure actually works. So you will see that the three layers, you have got P plus here, N minus here and P here. So these three layers will form one PNP transistor with the emitter as P plus and N minus as the base and collector as P. Okay, and one more transistor is there, and that is formed between N minus. Okay, so that is formed between N minus here and P and N plus here. So this will be your NPN transistor with collector being N, emitter being P, and emitter being your N plus and base being the P. And you can also see there is one MOSFET here which is formed. The gate will form the gate of this MOSFET, and the emitter is going to form the source, okay, and the drain will be because of this N minus. So a MOSFET will be formed, okay, and with this formation, let us see something called as an equivalent circuit of IGBT. So I represent IGBT equivalent circuit as follows. So what you will see is one MOSFET, okay, with the gate, and we'll have got one PNP transistor, one PNP which is connected to the collector, and NPN transistor, the emitter is connected to the emitter. So this is the equivalent circuit, and this is the simplified circuit that we can do away with NPN assuming it is there, and this becomes a simplified circuit. Okay, so this is your IGBT which will work on voltage that is given at the input, that is gate and emitter, and the collector current that will flow from collector to emitter once this MOSFET turns on. So what we see is basically the P serves as the collector for PNP device and also as base for NPN device. Okay, so that's how the equivalent circuit works, and the two PNP and NPN is formed as shown earlier. When gate is applied with VGS greater than VGS-TH, the MOSFET turns on. This gives the base drive to transistor which is here connected to the collector emitter transistor. Therefore, T1 starts conducting. The collector of T1 is base of T2. Therefore, regenerative action takes place and a large number of carriers are injected into the N- drift region. This reduces the on-state loss of IGBT like a BJT. And when gate drive is removed, IGBT is turned off. So when gate is removed, the induced channel will vanish and internal MOSFET will turn off. Therefore, T1 will turn off, T2 turns off, okay, and structure of IGBT is such that R1 is very small. If R1 small, T1 will not conduct. Therefore, IGBTs are different from MOSFETs. Hence, since resistance of drift region reduces when the gate drive is applied due to P plus injecting region. Therefore, on state of IGBT is very small. So, in this way, we can compare the MOSFET with IGBT. Now, let us look at the static characteristics. The IGBT symbol has been drawn here. Okay, and for this I am giving an input with the gate signal VG here. Okay, we need a VGE gate resistance is applied here, so the voltage comes here when after a drop of across RS. This is the source resistance, and this is the load side, okay, output side, and we have the collector current which will flow from VCC through the collector and emitter when this particular thing turns on. And how it happens, regeneration with the two transistors inside, we have just explained in the previous slide. So we are going to draw collector current versus VCE, and these are the different values of VGE that I am going to apply. So you will see that VGE, as VG is applied, the collector current goes on increasing. Okay. So static VI characteristics is drawn between IC versus VCE, and it behaves very similar to BJT except the control is now VGE. Therefore, IGBT is a voltage controlled device. This is the transfer characteristics where we plot IC versus your VGE, right? And it behaves like, as an PN diode kind of, but this is your transfer characteristics for IGBT. So this is the application of power devices. I had shown this graph earlier also to you. So coming to IGBT, where does it sit? You can see this is the IGBT. Okay, it sits here and it is between transistor and MOSFET. And this is the graph drawn for frequency range, and this is for the power capacity. So if you see, it is, in between, it is as far as power is concerned, it is better than MOSFET. Okay, but transistor is still better than IGBT as respect to power handling capacity. As far as frequency handling capacity, MOSFET is better than IGBT. Okay, but IGBT is better than transistor. So as far as applications are concerned, you can see it can go for UPSC, then it can go for this motor control. Okay, so it has its own different applications. It also can be used for robotics, welding machines, okay, and so forth. But specifically, applications of IGBT are widely used in medium power applications such as DC and AC motor drives and UPS systems, and power supplies for solenoids, relays, and contactors. Then also IGBTs are more expensive than BJTs, and they have lower gate requirements and lower switching losses. The ratings are up to 1200 volt and 500 amperes. So this is your IGBT. And if you look at now the next topic, that is di by dt and dv by dt limitation. So what exactly is this we are going to see? So any power device, and if you look at this is basically the switching characteristics of a transistor I have shown. So what happens is we are turning it on and turning it off here after some time. So when it is in off state, we should know that whether it's transistor or any device, the voltage across the device when it is off will be high, right? Whereas the current will be zero. So this is the voltage waveform and this is the current through the device. So what happens is I want to switch from off state to on state. This is the on state. So in the on state, what happens is voltage is going to be zero, but the current is going to be high. So these are the two stable states. This is the off state and this is the on state. But what happens is when I'm switching from off to on, there is a period which we call it as a transient state, where the voltage which was high earlier now starts to go down and become zero. Since because of the internal transient capacitance we have seen in switching, this will not have a 90 degrees like this fall. There will be a slope based on the values of the reactances of these capacitors, and this slope will be there. So now as this voltage starts to come down, there will be the current which is rising from off, that is from 0 to a high value, and that we call it as TD plus TR for transistor. Here they have taken off TD, so let's say we call this as the rise time. And coming here, you will see that in this is the on state and I'm trying to go to off state. So when I'm going to off state, the voltage which was 0 in off state, it has to get the high voltage. So it is moving from 0 to high. Again, it will not go instantaneously and it will take a slope. And the corresponding current which was on earlier with a high current, now when I move to off state, it has to become 0. So it will go with a slope same as this, and we call it as a TF, that is the fall time. Okay, so let us concentrate on here. What is happening is here also there is a voltage fall, that is rate of change of voltage with respect to time. So if I see this TR, what is the rate of voltage that is happening here? It will be dV by dt, that is what we call rate of change of voltage with respect to time. So in this case it is Vs minus 0, so it is Vs, and T is nothing but Tr. So dV by dt is Vs upon Tr. Similarly, if you see the current, in this case it is rising, so the current is di by dt. So what is the rate at which it is going? It is going from 0 to a value called as IL. So IL di by dt means rate of change of current. What is the rate of change of current? IL minus 0. So IL upon dt. dt is rate of change of time. So that is TR. So this is how we are going to define dV by dt is nothing but the rate of fall of voltage or rate of rise of voltage, and di by dt is nothing but rate of rise of current. Note that dV by dt and di by dt are max peak during the transient, and hence maximum power dissipation occurs during TR. The others two states, stable state, there will be not much power dissipations. So if you neglect TD, he says the TR is going to be the rise time, and here we are neglecting in the fall time, we are neglecting the storage time which we see in BJT, and hence here I am seeing that it is just TF. Now coming to di by dt and dv by dt limitations. So we have seen in the graph in earlier slide that when you turn on, the collector current rises and the di by dt is given by change of di by dt, that is change of current per a given unit of time, and is equal to your IL by TR, okay, and that is IL is nothing but the load current, which is nothing but the collector current. So I can replace it by ICS upon TR. So this is during the turn on, the collector current rises, and that rise in current we call it as di by dt. Similarly, during turn off, the collector emitter voltage must rise in relation to the fall of the collector current, right? So when it is turning off, the collector current will increase from low value to high value. At the same time, the collector current is going to fall. So if you see the voltage equation, dV by dt is equal to rate of change of voltage for a given time. So the change of voltage is from Vs to from 0 to Vs, and the time taken is Tf, that is the fall time, and this can be represented as VCC, that is the collector voltage, divided by Tf. So we represent these as equation 1 and equation 2. Okay, the conditions di by dt and dv by dt in both these equations 1 and 2 are set by the transistor switching characteristics and must be satisfied during turn on and turn off. So the transistor, if you see, it has its own rating specified by the manufacturer. That is, this transistor can tolerate di by dt and dv by dt maximum to such and such values, and if you try to go beyond that, or if during switching the waveform di by dt and dv by dt is exceeded, then the transistor might get damaged or it might do false triggering. So you are supposed to use the transistor between the specified value of di by dt and dv by dt by the manufacturer. So otherwise, protection circuits are normally required to keep operating di by dt and dv by dt within the allowable limits of the transistor. A typical switch with di by dt and dv by dt protection is shown below. So we'll see the figures. The RC network across the transistor is known as the snubber circuit. I will show you what is the snubber circuit. And the inductor LS is used to limit di by dt and is called as the series snubber. So these are the two protecting circuits that are required to protect a device from di by dt and dv by dt. Which are they? One is an RC network, and where is it connected? It is connected across the transistor. It could be transistor, it could be thyristor also, in case I want to protect a thyristor. And we have got one more inductor LS in series with the device, and that will actually protect by the, and that is called as the snubber. Okay, so now let us look at snubber circuit. What is snubber circuit? Snubber circuits are circuits which are needed to protect the power devices. Which are the power device in this particular circuit? This is the Q1, which is a power transistor, and it needs to be protected from two elements, that is di by dt, that is rate of rise of current, and dV by dt, rate of rise of voltage. So di by dt is required when the transistor is turning on, because the rate of rise of current when the transistor turns on should be limited to the prescribed value of the manufacturer, and that can be limited by using a series inductor Ls. This series inductor Ls is going to protect this transistor from di by dt. How does it do? We know an inductor opposes any change of current through it, because by developing a voltage across it. So how does the voltage develop across Ls? VL is equal to L into di by dt. So if di by dt is more voltage is developed. If di by dt is less voltage is developed. Hence, inductors have the property of opposing di by dt by developing a voltage across it. So, if whenever there is a high di by dt, a voltage will be formed here that is going to be in series with this and the load, and that will reduce di by dt that is flowing through the transistor, and hence protect this transistor from getting destroyed or making the di by dt not to go beyond the capacity of this transistor. Similarly, when this transistor is switching off, that is from on to off, that time we know a high voltage will come across this particular transistor. When this high voltage comes across this transistor, we should protect this transistor from high dV by dt. If rate of change of voltage with respect to time is more than the specified for the value for this transistor will work erratically, or it may even get damaged. So to prevent that, we connect a capacitor in parallel with this device that we want to protect. So what is the function of this capacitor? We know a capacitor, whenever it is charging, it will take some time to charge. It will not charge instantaneously. That means the voltage developed across this capacitor will take certain time. Means dV by dt will be more if I connect a capacitor here. Now because of that and this capacitor coming in parallel with this transistor, this capacitor will not allow more than the specified dV by dt to come across this particular transistor. Okay, so during turn off, the capacitor will prevent high dV by dt to come across this particular transistor. Then what is the function of this Rs? So Rs is basically into picture when this transistor turns on. When this transistor turns on from off state, we'll have two types of current flowing through the transistor. One is IL, that is the load current, which will get a path, and we have one more one, the capacitor, which is charged to plus minus now, it will discharge through this transistor. So the minute this Q1 turns on, no doubt we have Ls which will reduce the current through this transistor. But there are two currents that are flowing through this transistor. One is IL and the other is CS. These two currents might destroy, or it will be so high that more than the current carrying capability of Q1. And hence if I add this series resistance Rs, it will limit the current that is being discharged through the capacitor. We know a resistance will reduce the current flow, and hence it will be added in series with CS. So what we see is a snubber circuit basically consists of the protection circuit which consists of Ls, a series inductance, and a parallel CS and RS components. So these three form the snubber circuit. Now what is this DM? What is the role of the DM? See, when the transistor is switched off and we are assuming that the load current is flowing continuously, when it is off, the load current cannot flow through this, and hence it will be made to flow through DM by making this forward biased. So when this switches off, the inductor voltage will forward bias this DM, and the current will freewheel. So whatever is the current that is flowing here will freewheel through DM, and that DM it also becomes forward biased. Okay, I'll go continue later. Then that freewheeling will stop the minute transistor turns on. When the transistor turns on, the current will flow through the transistor and also charge this particular capacitor Cs. Okay, till a time it charges to plus minus, the DM is still in picture because this is positive. But once it charges, the inductor will not allow the capacitor to stop at 0 and recharges the capacitor to plus minus. At that stage, DM will stop to conduct. It will open up and IL will flow through Q1, and the capacitor now has the capacity to discharge through DS, which becomes positive whenever this terminal becomes positive of the capacitor. So that is only to explain DM, and they are basically called as the freewheeling diodes that are being used. So if you see here, I am giving a VB voltage that is applied to the transistor. So as long as VB is positive, the transistor will be in on state, right? So at this point, at t equal to 0, when I apply VB from 0 to VB, the load current is going to rise, and it will rise with a slope because of Ls and also its own inductor, and the slope is going to rise in this fashion. This is the current that is flowing, and that is the current through the circuit, and it will reach its peak value after some time, and that is called as the rise time. Here the delay time is considered as 0. Once it reaches this value, this continues to be DC or continues to be high, and hence the di by dt effect will be gone now because it has reached the final value, and because now this current is going to be fixed, di by dt will be 0, the effect of Ls after this will diminish, and the current will flow as though this particular device is not there through the load. How long will it flow? As long as the input that is given to the transistor base keeps this transistor high or on. Once the base is made negative, that is the base becomes negative, so this is minus and plus, and this transistor is expected to go off. At that time, what happens? Again, there is a change. This becomes off. Okay, the inductor will not allow the current to stop flowing because again di by dt comes into picture, and the rate of fall of this current will be seen such that the stored the inductor will fall from high value to low value, that is the load current will fall from high value to low value, and the time taken to fall is TF. Now what is this? This is IF. So when is IF going to come into picture? IF will come into picture when the transistor is still conducting, or when this transistor is turning on before it becomes finally on. Before that, this period, the current means the transistor is still not on, and whatever is the current that has to be freewheeled through this. So that is IF. So the load current will be the same current that is freewheeling through this diode, okay, before TQ1 turns on properly. And here also, here you see, here again the current is going to fall. At that time, again the freewheeling effect will start, and now the current will pick up in this direction and Q1 turns off. Okay, now what we show here is different modes of operation. In mode 1, what we are doing, now we are replacing the RL and RL with a current source IL. Okay, and also we have, for simplicity as of now, I have removed this C and D1. So in mode 1, what is happening? I am applying a positive voltage here, and the transistor is going to turn on, and the load current is going to flow through it. So this is a simplified diagram that I am going to show, and this is IF that will flow whenever DM comes into picture, and that is the during the transient states of the two transistors. Otherwise this DM will not be in picture during the stable state of the transistor. So these are the three modes of operation, and I was talking to you about the mode 1 operation. So in mode 1 operation, the transistor is going to turn on. Okay, and we have seen that in the earlier this the di by dt is equal to IL by TR, and that is equal to ICS upon TR. I had asked you to remember this equation that we have done. Now here what happens is, during turn on, when this transistor turns on, the current is going to, the rate of rise of current is going to be high, and because of Ls it is going to be limited. So what happens, how it is limited? By a voltage developed across this inductor. So that voltage across the inductor is given as Vs is equal to L into di by dt, or di by dt is equal to Vs by L. So this will write as equation 3. If you compare this equation 1, this is also di by dt, and substitute here for Vs by Ls, we will get an equation that will determine the value of Ls, which is nothing but the series inductance value of the snubber circuit. So Ls will be equal to Vs upon Ls, okay, that is, if I substitute di by dt as IL upon TR, you will get Ls is equal to Vs into TR by IL. Note this as equation 4. So we are now, what we are doing is designing this snubber circuit. So for designing the snubber circuit, I need to find the value of Ls, and that Ls I can find using this concept, knowing that the inductor voltage is equal to L into di by dt, and equating it to the first equation that we had derived from the waveform, I get a value for Ls. Now what is left is to find the value of Cs and Rs, which are the other two components of the snubber circuit. Next, during turn off, the capacitor Cs. See, now what happens is, during turn off, we have this capacitor which is in parallel with the device. Because this device turns off, the current cannot flow through that, and it will start charging this capacitor. Okay, and equivalent circuit is shown in this mode too, and in this case the capacitor voltage now will appear across the transistor. And what is the work of the capacitor? I am supposed to reduce the dV by dt across, coming across the device, otherwise it will damage that device. So because a capacitor is known to charge slowly, if I have a series resistance, still further it will reduce. So dV by dt, which is coming across the device through this capacitor, further reduces. So we are using the properties of inductor to reduce di by dt, and the property of capacitor in parallel with the device to reduce the dV by dt. Okay. So using equation 2, I had told you dV by dt is Vs upon Tf. Okay. And dV by dt, voltage across the inductor, we know equation is IL upon CS. That is I is equal to C into dV by dt. That is the current through the capacitor. Using these two equations, I can find the value of CS as IL into TF upon Vs. So we get two equations and how to get the value of the capacitor and inductor. Once the capacitor is charged to Vs, okay, then the diode which is there, I have shown you one diode here, right? It will start to turn on, right? If this capacitor, you can see this figure here. This is your mode 3. Once the capacitor has charged, when does it charge? When the device which is in parallel with it, it becomes off. It will start to charge and it will charge to the input value Vs. Then this becomes plus, in which case the diode will become forward biased. Due to the energy stored, okay, stored in Ls, there will be a damped, and there is some energy stored here as well. There will be a damped resonant circuit as shown in this. So you get a damped current that will start to discharge through DM. The RLC formed. Now you have R, C, and we have got the L. RLC that is formed is normally made critically damped to avoid any oscillations, right? We don't want any oscillations. We want it to smoothly become off. For unity critical damping, that is delta equal to 1, we have the equation delta equal to R by 2 root of C by L. And when delta is equal to 1, I get the value of Rs equal to 2 root of Ls by Cs. So I've got three formulas now. One is for Ls, the other is for capacitor, that is Cs, and the other is the Rs. Now note that when I say Ls here, S stands normally for the snubber. Okay, snubber circuit. So these are the snubber elements R, C and L, and these are the equations that I am using to evaluate the value of them. Now the capacitor Cs has to discharge through the transistor. Now the transistor is off, it cannot discharge like this, right? And the increase the peak current rating of the transistor. Now what happens is, this is off and now let's say I turn it on. When I turn it on, there is some high value of capacitance that is stored here, right? Which has made this forward bias. Because this transistor turns on, when I make it on, this voltage will try to dissipate through that transistor. Since this as well as the load current together is going through the device, okay, this device which is parallel to CS, the current di by dt will be very, very high. Okay, in order to reduce that, I connect an RS in series with capacitor. So the capacitor Cs has to discharge through the transistor, and the increase peak current rating of the transistor, that will increase. The discharge through the resistor, if I discharge it through this RS, you can avoid by placing this in series, so it will avoid that current to be very high. The discharge current is shown here. If you go figure below, when choosing the value of Rs, when I am choosing this, now how do I get the value of Rs? The discharge time RSCS, okay, discharge time RSCS, which is called as tau s, should be considered. A discharge time of 1/3 the switching period. So if this is the switching period, I'm going to turn it on here and then off here. So if this is the switching period, then if I compare, tau s should be just 1/3 of the switching period. Okay, so I will take that as Ts equal to 1 by Fs. So Ts should becomes equal to 3 into Rs into Cs. So Rs should also be equal to 1 upon 3 Fs into Cs. So these are the formulas that you have to use if any problem is asked to you. So RSK is determined by this, no doubt, but if the because of the switching action, I have to include this RS. Okay, also take care of the current should be limited when the transistor turns on. So we have found the value of Ls, Cs and Rs. These are the snubber circuit components used to protect the power device from di by dt and dv by dt. One more element that we need to learn is the snubber power loss. So when we talk about snubber power loss, we basically look into the power loss achieved because of the Rs and Cs as shown here in this particular figure. So these two elements will be used to find the power loss, and it is given by half Cs, half may 0.5 Cs into Vs squared, because that will capacitor will charge to Vs squared, into Fs. So it is proportional to Vs square times and Fs. Okay, so power loss need to be found out using this particular formula. So after evaluating the values of Cs, Ls and Rs and also finding the power loss in the snubber circuit, let us look at this problem and try to find the components of the snubber circuit for the given conditions in the problem. So the problem goes like this. A bipolar transistor is operated as a chopper switch. So this will be acting like a chopper on and off at a frequency of Fs equal to 10 kilohertz. So let us note down the given parameters. Fs as 10 kilohertz. The circuit arrangement is as shown in this particular figure. Same figure that we have used to derive the values of Ls, Rs and Cs. The DC voltage of the chopper is 220 volts. So Vs is given as 220 volts and the load current IL is equal to 100 amperes. VCE sat, that is the voltage across the collector emitter when it turns on, is 0. And the switching times TD is 0. So we know that turn on is TD plus TR. So in our derivation also we have taken TD as 0. If this value is given, you will have to take a T on as TD plus TR. And TR is given as 3 micro. So I have noted down TR as 3 microseconds and TF as 1.2 microseconds. Determine the value of Ls. We have to find the value of Cs and Rs. For Rs, I have to find for critically damped condition. So we know that we have to put delta equal to 1 and get the value of Rs. Similarly, we have to find the value of again Rs if the discharge time is limited to 1/3 of the switching frequency. Okay. So two formulas we have to use. For one is for critically damped and the other is the switching period is 1/3 of the switching period. Okay, discharge time. And Rs is the peak discharge current is limited to 10% of the load current. So if I can evaluate the load current is given to you. So 1/3 of that will be going through this Rs. If I look into that value, I should find, if I want to limit it to 10%, what is the value of this Rs. So Rs will be evaluated 3 times for these different conditions, but L and C will be directly derived from the formula that was given to you earlier. So let us solve this problem next. Okay, so we have given the parameters in the problem are listed down which are given, and we have to evaluate the value of Ls. We know is equal to VSTR by IL. If I substitute the values, I'll get the value of Ls as equal to 220 into TR is 3 micro divided by Vs, that is 100, that is IL, that is 100. So I get 6.6 microhenries. If for to evaluate the value of Cs, I use this formula Cs equal to ILTF by Vs. We have derived all of them. Substituting the values, I should be getting 0.55 microfarads. And this is the value of Rs that I need to evaluate, okay, and under your damped conditions. And I will get this as Rs as 6.93 ohms. And this is the value of Rs that I am evaluating for the discharge time being 1/3 of the switching frequency. So I get 1/3 Fs into Cs. From that I get the Rs value is 60.6 ohms. Okay, and we also have your equation to evaluate the value of Rs. Okay, for 1/10 of the load current. To evaluate the 1/10, I take 0.1 of IL into, so we know V by R is equal to the current. So for current I've taken as 1/10 of the load current. So if substituting, I get a value of RS 22 ohms. So LS, CS we have evaluated. RS we are evaluating 3 times for different conditions that are asked in the problem. And finally we evaluate the snubber loss, and we know the snubber loss formula is 0.5 CS Vs squared Vfs. Substituting, we get 133.1 watts. So this is the solution to the problem, and this is the way we have to solve the snubber circuit problems in your examinations. So thank you, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask so.